Good evening and welcome to our Planning Commission meeting, Tuesday, September 17th. And Tammy, will you do a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Volbada. Commissioner Weiss,
Here.
Commissioner Langston. Commissioner Labonte,
Present.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Mercero. Chair Smith.
Present. Let's do the flag salute, please. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All items listed below are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a commission member or person in the audience requests specific items be removed from the consent agenda. The discussion prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt the consent agenda. Okay, so the first item we have
Chair
is
Smith, I'm going to interrupt for a moment. It appears Commissioner Mercero is on,
wonderful.
has logged in.
Okay, good. Wonderful. Commissioner Mercero, can you hear us? You have yourself muted. Please unmute yourself and you should be able to speak. Okay, I will continue on. Item number 1 is approval of August 20, 2024 meeting minutes. Item number 2 is our monthly planning report, August of 2024. Item number 3 is public hearing file TXT-24-02. Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment to Climate-Friendly and Equitable Communities, CFEC, and Legislative Development Code updates. And then business from the public, and then the Planning Commission. So does anyone have any corrections that need to be made to the meeting minutes?
I do not, if you can hear me.
We can hear you fine now. Great, success. Okay. I would entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
So moved. I'll second.
Commissioner Smith made the motion and it was seconded by Commissioner Weiss. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Weiss,
Yes.
Commissioner Labonte,
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercero,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes. Meeting minutes approved. Next item, hold on, here is our staff report.
Thank you, Chair Smith.
Thank you.
Regarding the 2 hearings that you moved forward in your August meeting to the City Council, both the rezoning of the park spaces into open space, that was approved by City Council last week at their hearing. And I don't know the result of Urban Renewal District, Tammy, because I was not there for that part of it. It also was approved. Okay, fantastic.
Yes,
So both of those that you moved forward were ultimately approved. We had a pre-application last week on the children's course wanting to add a pole barn storage building for some of their equipment that they currently store outdoors. It's a little bit complicated because it's in the habitat conservation area and the floodplain area, even though it's such a small addition to such a large site. But they've been given all the information and are making some decisions about how to move forward with development of their property. I have the building permits on the second page as well as future items. And one item that I missed on future items is that next week we will have a joint work session between City Council and Planning Commission. That's on Tuesday, the 24th, and there'll be a packet out tomorrow for all of you. So if there are any questions, also I would add that on October 15th, that work session regarding food cart regulations, we're also going to consider the design review process and if there's any level that should be left at the staff level to review small design review applications like the canopy covers and things like that that we've been seeing lately. And also the school district has submitted an application to put dugouts at Cracksburger Middle School, which would be new structures. So they would come before you for design review, but they've also put forward a canopy cover at the Gladstone Center for Children and Families. So they're deciding whether they want to put those two into one application to sort of bring it all through at one time for design review, or how they want to do that right now. So I'm not sure if they'll make it in by the deadline, which is next Wednesday for public notice, to be able to do that 20 days before our October hearing, or if we'll just be doing a work session in October. So TBD on what's on your agenda, but those are the full potential items.
And next Tuesday is the work session with city council?
That's right. It'll be at 5:30 here in this room.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to add?
You said a packet will be out tomorrow?
That's right.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Is it gonna be a large one? Do we need to pick it up or can we print it out?
It's pretty small.
Okay,
Yeah, it's like a 3 or 4 page memo just of what's happened with the town center project till this point. And then it has, or maybe it's only 2 pages of that memo, but then it is a 27-page packet of what the stakeholder advisory committee saw at their second meeting, because they were given market analysis and anti-displacement review and strategies for each of the 3 options for town center. So we just wanted everybody to have that information. I wouldn't necessarily consider it deep required reading. It's just more informative for where we are and how we've gotten there in the project.
okay.
And staff can have packets available to pick up, or we'll make sure and have your packet here if you're not able to pick it up.
Commissioner Weiss?
I would just like to humbly request, maybe at the beginning of that meeting, we can do a review of the interplay between town center and master plan and the core overlay, and just like because the mechanics are different and the funding's different and the zoning requirements, I just, every time I like to reset on what each of those means and how, like, what they mean to each other.
Sure thing. We're right now drafting the PowerPoint for that. So that's great feedback. We'll add that in.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
That's an excellent suggestion. Thank you. Commissioner Labonte, do you have any questions?
No, thank you. I'm excited
Commis-
for the dugout. I'm excited to see the plans for the baseball dugout. I'm a fan. So anyways, nothing else.
Commissioner Mercero, do you have any questions?
No questions other than having a heck of a time signing on tonight. I'm losing my mind, I think.
No, you're not. No, you're not. I'm glad you were able to join us. Okay, if that's all you have, Heather, let's move on to item number 3. I would like to open the public hearing for file TXT-24-02, the comprehensive plan text amendment for climate-friendly and equitable communities, and is called to order. And this is a legislative land issue, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The order of business we will follow in conducting this hearing will be presentation of staff report, entry of correspondence into the record, public testimony, additional staff comments, questions from the Planning Commission, hearing closed, no further testimony from the audience, and discussion by commission and a decision. Okay. Regarding testimony, any interested persons may present testimony concerning the proposed amendments. The public hearing is your opportunity to comment on the proposal before the city makes a decision. We want to hear what you have to say, and we want you to give us your point of view. Help us understand why you have drawn your conclusion and how it relates to the proposal. Public testimony for this hearing will be called for in 3 groups. Testimony in favor of the proposal, testimony opposed to the proposal, and neutral testimony. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit it to the city recorder. I will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through me. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be taped. you are participating online. If you are participating online, click the raise your hand button at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. If you are participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. Abstentions and conflicts of interest. At this time, I would like to ask members of the Planning Commission if they are abstaining from this matter or need to declare any conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature of the conflict of interest and indicate whether you intend to participate or abstain from the hearing. Do we have any planning commissioners that wish to? Commissioner Weiss.
No conflict and I plan to participate.
Okay, great. Commissioner Labonte?
No conflict. I plan to participate, but I also believe that I believe the commission should consider a motion to delay this hearing until our next meeting when we have a full house, full staff of our planning commission. And I'd like that to be considered.
Okay, is that all?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Smith,
I have no conflicts and plan to participate.
Commissioner Mercero,
I have no conflicts and I hope to participate.
I have no conflicts and will participate. In regards to Commissioner Labonte's request, Heather?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally a valid request and thought, and I think it is important to hear all the voices on the planning commission. I will say, because this is legislative, you're making a recommendation. So we heard from Commissioners Volbada and Langston that they wouldn't be able to make it, but didn't hear any concerns or issues they wanted to raise. And then they would have the opportunity to do so at the city council meeting as well, or prior to that if they chose to do so. So that's something to consider too. I don't know if that allays the concerns. The city is obligated to complete this work, but we have until the end of this calendar year to do so. So we're not in a super rush, but we're on track to meet that deadline. So those would be my thoughts on that.
Well, let me ask Commissioner Weiss, what are your feelings on this?
I'm curious, Commissioner Labonte, from your perspective, would it make sense for us to have the open discussion tonight, this evening, and make a recommendation requesting additional comments from our two peers that are not here today, knowing that we have a kind of a stacked agenda over the next little bit? I think that's my only thought, but I'm happy to delay this as well if you feel passionately about it.
Commissioner Smith, your feelings, please.
I'm respectful of Commissioner Labonte's position, but I think we should probably move this along. Again, there doesn't seem to be anything of any arguable significance in this packet and the commissioners that are not here, again, didn't voice any concerns about any of the portions of it.
Just so I'm clear, when I was reading everything, it's legislatively already in place. We're just reviewing it and basically accepting it. There's nothing we can refute. These are the new rules, correct?
That is correct, with the caveat that we're, one of many cities who are doing this for the first time. So if there were questions like, do we have to do it that way? Could we try it this other way? That's something that we could consider. And we have our city attorney here to weigh in as well to sort of balance out my reading of the state code and ORS and OARs and his. And so there could be some discussion in that way if there were substantive questions, but what we are putting forward is based on what other cities have done as well. We did research that. So I think we're pretty solid with what we're putting forward, that we comply with the state law. So yeah, I guess I would say.
Commissioner Mercero, what are your feelings?
Well, I started out when this whole procedure started some time ago, and it looks to me like it's been written up and thought out pretty well, and it's basically looks like a carbon copy of what I started with the book I started out with, only it's changed a whole bunch.
I think we should go ahead and do the report. These are my feelings. I'm speaking commission, the chair. But we were going to vote on this tonight to move it forward, correct?
We were asking you to make a recommendation to city council, and then they would open another public hearing on October 8th.
Okay.
Ms. Austin is again, in respect of Commissioner Labonte's position, is next Thursday or next Tuesday, is that a time that some of these things could be discussed, or has the ship sailed by then?
The ship hasn't sailed. If you choose to forward or to not make a recommendation this evening, we would move this to our October meeting date here at Planning Commission. I don't know what that means for city council. I don't have that agenda in front of me for November. I don't know, Tammy, if you have that.
I know they're getting pretty filled up at this point
Yeah,
for their agendas, but
That is the issue, is the city council meets once a month for business and once a month for work session.
And at work
Um,
sessions,
so-
you're not able to, there's no voting done at that.
Right.
Okay,
So then we do run into problems if we start pushing into December for getting this to council.
thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. The majority wants to move forward is what I gathered. Is that what everybody else heard?
I would say we should move forward.
Okay, Commissioner Weiss?
Yeah, I would think, let's move forward, and we can always keep, if we need more perspectives on this, we could always delay a vote on putting forward a recommendation after hearing the readout.
Because, yeah, I mean, we don't want to hold anything up, but if for some reason we hit somewhere where we're at a stall, we could always do all of our discussion and review tonight and then just have a vote at the beginning of our next meeting.
I-
Go ahead.
I was just gonna note, I think it's especially warranted, the fact that by policy, we keep the planning commission limited in the number of folks who are involved in the active development of land, and those are our folks that are gone right now. So if we do come across, again, I think I would support putting things off if there's any
Okay.
disagreement among the group.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move forward. Andrew, are you all right with that?
I appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Let's proceed. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. We'll pull up a slideshow here to go over. Okay, this evening we're discussing updates to the Gladstone Municipal Code. It's file TXT 24-02. It's a comprehensive plan amendment. The city staff is proposing to update multiple chapters of Gladstone Municipal Code. This will bring us into compliance with recent changes to state laws and regulations. I'm using the word recent really generously here. Some of the rules came into place as early as 2019, but we are doing a broad sweep over the last 5 years and making sure that we catch up with everything that's happened. It's been very busy at the Oregon State Legislature and in the rulemaking at the state level. So there are 4 types of code updates in your packet. The parking related CFAC, climate friendly and equitable community parking related code updates are highlighted in green. Anything related to housing legislation is in yellow, childcare changes in gray, and then just general code cleanup. There were some inconsistencies in language and things that I noticed throughout, so I put those in blue.
Commissioner Smith found something that needs to be changed today.
Oh, okay.
Yes, on page 3-11.
Okay.
Right in the middle of page 17.68.010, the second line refers to our city administrator as a he.
Thank you. Yes.
That's not her pronoun of choice.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that is, that actually came up at city council last week. So I had every intention of updating that. I really appreciate you bringing that to my attention. That's the current code language. And I did say that we could look at that and bring that up to date. So thank you for reminding me
Yes,
of that.
thank you,
and catching
Commissioner
that.
Smith. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Please
that's
continue.
great. Thank you. And I believe the way that they changed it on the ordinance was to just say city administrator or designee and just take out the pronoun. So I think I would recommend we do that.
I'm fine with that as well.
Okay, great. So just back to the packet in general, the first round of changes related to parking, again, climate-friendly and equitable communities, rulemaking changed, Oregon Administrative Rules 660.012-0400 through 0450. And that's to say related to vehicular travel is what those code sections are. Our transportation planning rule is in OAR 660.012. So these updates are required to have no mandated off-street parking within a half mile of McLaughlin. We've talked about this a lot. We've implemented this on some recent design review applications. So we already know about that one and we've been implementing it, and now we'll just update our code to match what we've been doing there. The second one is a interesting one. It's that we need to remove all parking mandates within a quarter mile of our Gladstone Town Center. City Administrator Betts and I feel like this will be a point of discussion at the work session next week as to how the town center boundary affects parking and then what that means for designating the town center boundary. So that has to be in there, but what that means as far as forming a town center boundary, we get to decide as a city. Yes.
A question on the parking. Wouldn't the half mile from McLaughlin Boulevard and the quarter mile from the town center, wouldn't they overlap?
It depends. In the packet you'll receive tomorrow, there is this option 3 that brings the town center over toward 82nd to include the Safeway grocery store. So in that case, the town center would be quite a bit beyond the McLaughlin boundary that's in place.
Thanks.
And I'll say that the half mile from McLaughlin goes less than a full block past Portland Avenue. So any town center that takes in all of Portland Avenue will extend the parking mandate free area by about a quarter mile, if that makes sense. Okay. When we look at mandates for residential developments, anything over 2 dwelling units on a lot is now 1 space per unit. So the single family detached home can still have 2 spaces required outside of those mandate free areas. But anything that's duplex, triplex, quadplex, or multifamily and townhouses, that's 1 per unit. We'd remove all mandates for small affordable housing units and childcare facilities. Will require electric vehicle charging conduit for new multifamily and mixed use developments serving 40% of all parking spaces. Provide preferential placement of carpool vanpool parking. We already had code for carpool vanpool. We just had to touch it up a bit for where it's located and how it works. Allow redevelopment of parking lots for bikes and transit uses, allow and facilitate shared parking, and then require tree canopy, solar panels, or a fee in lieu of those types of things for larger parking areas. That one I feel like is less likely. We don't have a lot of really large sites that I think we'd have a half acre of parking on, but we'll put it in the code and have it there to comply. So we received comments from the DLCD staff about the packet that came to you a week ago. And so we updated some things to meet those comments. One is that it looks like there might be a question from
Yeah.
Commissioner Labonte.
Commissioner Labonte had a question.
I'm wondering, I was reading through and this is a great time to get some clarity on this. With the electric charging stations, so these would be on street stations
These would be on private property in the parking lot.
that would, okay.
So
So we're
we'd be
not requiring on-street parking.
Right, but if you provide it, which we feel, well, the state thinks that people will still be providing it for multifamily, and especially in places where there's not good transit access. And so if a developer comes in, well, 2 things there. There are parts of the city where you still would be required to do it. So that's outside of those mandate-free areas. And then when you are required to do it, or if you're not required to put parking, but you decide to put parking in, then whatever you decide to put in, 40% of those spaces are piped conduit for EV, not necessarily ready to charge, but the conduit's available. That's the state law.
So they don't have to be functioning.
They don't have to be functioning, correct? And the current state law is that, and this is already applicable in Gladstone and other cities, that 20% of all privately owned new parking spots have to have conduit to serve electric vehicle charging. And that even, if you'll recall, we did a design review for a canopy cover on the Seventh-day Adventist site, and they were redoing some of their parking areas, and they had to put in conduit for 40% of the redeveloped parking areas. And that's administered at the time of building permit. And this, in fact, would be administered at the time of building permit, but putting in the development code does give a heads up to the developer that it's going to be required. So I think it is a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay. So we did update chapter 17.48, which is the off-street parking and loading, because there was frankly one whole section that I missed when I was updating the code language. I must have thought I had covered it and skipped right over it. So I updated that, and that's both in print if you're here in person, and we sent that around late yesterday afternoon by email. And then our city attorney is on the call. He was able to give feedback today about the new GMC chapter 3.14, and that's related to commercial parking lot local tax. And that would be if and when the city of Gladstone gets a commercial parking lot. I have heard talk that that could potentially happen near Portland Avenue at some point in the future. So then if they did, they would be subject to that commercial parking lot local tax. Regarding GMC chapter 12.26, conversion of underutilized street parking, the city attorney made the point that we may not need to put that into our municipal code, that the way it's worded in the state statute, it can be more policy based at the city level, kind of the way the city administers business licenses. It could be more of something that you do more administratively and outside of the land use process. Both of these, because they're not in Title 17, which is our development code, neither one will be part of what we move forward as our comprehensive plan text amendment. So consider, please, both of these pieces of information as a reference or a resource and not something that you're moving forward recommending to adopt by the city council. We will likely bring forward chapter 3.14 as a separate ordinance for the council to adopt, and then work with staff to do a policy on the conversion of the street parking. But it's really the changes to anything in Title 17 that we're asking you to make a recommendation on this evening. So that parking mandate exceptionary map would be referenced in 17.48. And that would be updated, of course, once we get our town center boundary set. That's everything on parking for now. Are there any questions before I move on?
No.
Okay.
Commissioner Mercero or Commissioner Labonte, do you have any questions?
Not
I
right now.
don't have any.
Okay,
This
thank
is
you.
Mercer.
Okay. So housing, the legislature, in my opinion, has been most busy on housing over the last couple of years. They've been really looking at how to remove barriers to housing and how to make it different types of housing easier to build, easier to get into, potentially less expensive, although that's always a difficult thing to do. So we went through and looked at our development code just to make sure that we were complying with all of the House and Senate bills that have passed. So there are things like updating our ADU standards. Right now, we're not clear and objective. We say it has to resemble what the existing house looks like. And I've actually had someone who said, how do I prove that? And I said, oh, well, if you have to ask that question, it's not clear and objective, right? So just to simplify that, most cities have just removed those standards for matching the existing home. There haven't been reported cases that I'm aware of in great numbers where ADUs have been made to look totally different than the existing home or been really out of character. And they're in the rear and side yards, so they're generally de-emphasized on the property to begin with. Regarding manufactured and prefabricated dwellings, there were a lot of changes to the way things are defined and the way things are located, but generally manufactured and prefabricated dwellings can be placed on the same type of lots that single-family detached homes can be stick-built on. The Housing Omnibus Bill requires us to allow affordable housing in commercial zoning districts, and there are thresholds by state law of what that means that we have included into our development code, as well as adding a single room occupancy as a permitted housing type. We do have the requirement to allow conversion of a building from commercial to residential. So if there were a commercial building that's in a commercial zoning district that someone wanted to convert into residential, we would now permit that without requiring a conditional use review. And then just requiring administrative review rather than coming to planning commission for either expansion of a non-conforming use or a replat. So those are just changes of the review process, but still subject to development code.
May I
Yes.
ask, the conversion of commercial property, is that true of any commercial property in the city or just on the Portland Ave?
That's
or-
any commercial zoning district. So it'd be the C3 also and the C1.
And that they could go to like 100% conversion to residential, or is there like a mix that's required?
I believe it's 100%. I can verify that.
Sure. Okay, interesting. Thank you.
I'm just going to make a note and then circle back to that when discussion ensues. So also in your packet, we noted that Gladstone is considered a severely rent burdened city, meaning that more than 25% of renter occupied households in the city spend more than 50% of their income on gross rent every month. So we are required to hold a meeting, a public meeting about being a severely rent burdened community and what potential things we might do to address that. So addressing these required housing laws does allow us to meet that criteria of holding that meeting and taking some steps toward potentially reducing rent burdens in the city. So at our October 8th city council meeting, we've been noticing that in the ways that are required to notice our severely rent burdened meeting and in the staff report. And then tonight we're noticing that that meeting will occur. That's everything on housing. Any additional questions on housing? I know I'll look up the question about HB 2984.
Is there specific phrasing in the communication we sent out for the severely rent burdened?
Yes, there
that-
is required language in the, I believe it was in HB 4006, but the city gets a notification every year that we're required to do it and what we're required to say and who we're supposed to send it to.
Okay. And then in the city council meeting at which that's addressed, there's space open for discussion or like
Yes.
for feedback from the public on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's meant so that residents can have an opportunity to tell their story or ask questions or make suggestions, that type of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, childcare. So in 2021, the legislature added language requiring cities to allow childcare in commercial and industrial zones. In our development code, we had a few extra things with a childcare facility, such as like a play yard and certain fencing and things. But the legislature said, no, we don't want to put any additional conditions or regulations on those types of uses that aren't on a standard commercial or industrial use in that zone. So we went ahead and made that change. And then a family childcare home, which is a regulated term as well, is permitted outright in all residential zones. We had that as conditional in a couple of our residential zones, so we made that change. And then again, in the blue is the code cleanup. So not required by state law, but just made changes throughout for consistency. Any questions about childcare or code cleanup? Okay. So with that, the staff report that you received we tried to get it to you actually a little early this time, so we got it to you last Monday, just because we knew it was a lot of information. It does demonstrate compliance with the Oregon statewide planning goals, Gladstone Municipal Code, Metro's functional plan and transportation planning rule. Those findings are in the staff report and would go forward with a planning commission recommendation. And they have been submitted to DLCD, and it should say Metro as well. I received feedback from Metro staff that they had no concerns and they were appreciative of the work that had been done. So I do believe that we are in compliance with state law, Metro requirements, and then our own requirements for comprehensive plan text amendment.
Once we make our
Yes.
recommendation and it goes before the city council, do these final changes, amendments and updates, do they go to someone in the state that it says yay or nay, these are acceptable?
Yes, they go to so we have to give notice to DLCD that you locally adopted these changes, and then those are available for review and comment. But if no one has testified in any of the land use hearings, either in writing or in person, then no one has the ability to appeal them to LUBA.
Okay.
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 So with that, we are recommending that you recommend approval of the proposed amendments to city council at their October 8th meeting. And again, we're just looking at the changes to Title 17. So anything that begins with a 17. And I will look up the question about conversion of commercial to residential. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Weiss?
I've got just a little bit of hesitation on 17.10.030.5E, the one about style matching ADUs to the existing structure. I believe there's probably not examples of ADUs that are significantly styled differently, but we are kind of giving up some of the control that we have over development and addition of ADUs. We've made a lot of sweeping changes to make the addition of ADUs much easier for residents. And so I just think we want to be conscientious about that as we kind of think about putting this forward.
That's an excellent point. Living in an area where, I know there's some people on West Dartmouth that are thinking about it, you want them to still be aesthetically pleasing. And I know that when Mayor Milch was our chair, we really labored over what we did decide upon. And I'm kind of more inclined to want to keep those in place to a degree. Is that feasible?
We could definitely keep roof pitch because it says it the same. So that's clear and objective. You tell us what the roof pitch is of your existing home. You put it as the same. We can't use the terminology visually similar. So where I have run into issues with applicants is they will say, I can't use the same siding. It's no longer available. I have to use something else. It's in the same character because I want it to look like that, but it's not the same. And so if you remove visually similar and it has to be the same, you might run into potential problems where someone can't build an ADU because they can't get the same siding. So I guess the siding finished materials would be one where I would say if you want to keep the roof pitch the same, windows, perhaps you say the same number of paint. I don't know how you'd want to be specific. It has to be clear and objective by state law. You can't use visually similar.
Okay. Do you have any other questions or? I know it's kind of, I'm torn on that too. So
Yeah.
I know we need to have our verbiage be something that is totally objective in the sense of not being, well. What do you suggest, Commissioner Weiss? I can see you're very perplexed by this.
Yeah.
I have a thought about the finished materials because what we came to with the applicant I have in mind is they had vertical siding on their primary home, and they proposed horizontal siding on the ADU. And I said that doesn't seem visually similar to me. So it could be that exterior finished materials shall be the same, period. The same means vertical for vertical, horizontal for horizontal, or stucco for, or, you know, the same direction of siding material, and then be really specific that vertical, vertical, horizontal, horizontal, stucco, or other the same. Something like that.
Can you use something of comparable quality? And you just mentioned vertical siding, which I have on my house
Mhm.
and wish it was, had never been put on.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, if I was going to add an ADU on my property, I would not want to have vertical siding on.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I've run into too, where they said, we ultimately want to replace the siding on our main home. So we want to, but we have the money and the financing for the ADU right now. We want to build it the way we want ultimately everything on the property to look. And in the next 5 years, we plan to redo the siding on the house. So yeah.
Would an ADU, if Commissioner Weiss was going to put one on his property, would it have to come to the Planning Commission for approval?
No, it goes straight to building permit. And again, that's part of that clear and objective, right? So that it's, you know, what you need to do to pull a permit on that and get an approval is the idea with clear and objective.
Because if they had to do that, we would have like other structures that come in, they always show us the materials that are
Mhm.
going to be used on the outside for our approvals.
Right.
Thank you.
I think we're wanting to have that very specific design, not design review, but I think we're gonna need to be really specific.
Yeah, and I just wanted to open the discussion about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know how many ADUs will see, like, you know, most of these happen in the rear side of the property, so a lot of them don't have a large visual impact on the neighborhood. Also, I think we've had this conversation before, our neighborhoods are not very uniform. It's something we love about Gladstone, so I'm not.
And some of them are gonna be prefab, you know, or even
Mhm.
there's companies that are specifically focusing on little small ADUs that are pre-built.
Yeah.
Dropped on the location.
Well, and I guess that's part of what I maybe maybe it's not a real concern, but like a storage container, micro house or whatever, if we pull back any uh exterior finished material phrasing, could we see a storage container that's got the storage container company logo on the side dropped off as a ADU?
Generally, when I've seen those, they have always been painted and there's no branding of any sort on them.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
imagining worst case scenario, right?
Because there is a little community up in Oregon City that it's like half of the block is all the shipping container homes. And they've been customized to look quite nice, actually. But we need to be clear and objective, but we can have some specific.
Yes, like for
Well-
example, the roof pitch is the same as the predominant roof pitch of the primary dwelling unit. That's fine language. I guess it adds a layer when trying to review the building permit, just making sure that they've provided the correct information on the primary building roof pitch. You know, but that is clear and objective. You could keep that in there.
I mean, there's another side of this.
No,
I don't want to.
you bring up a good point, because what if somebody, because I know we really discussed hard, like, well, you can't just bring in a little camping trailer and make it an ADU. I mean, we discussed all of that very carefully to make sure we weren't gonna get, you know, grandpa's 1950, whatever. You remember that, don't you, Pat? Yeah. Because there was concern about substandard, you know, type of criteria of what could and could not be used for it.
Well, and now the state law says that you can use manufactured or prefabricated structures. So that sort of supersedes not having those types. It can't be a travel trailer, but it could be something built for habitation that's pre-constructed and brought onto site. And the roof pitch, you know, while it's clear and objective, there might be situations where someone has some sort of gabled home, or maybe they have a flat roof and they want to have a gabled ADU and it looks fine. It matches all the other stuff in the neighborhood or something, but you're precluding that too. So it kind of goes both ways.
Commissioner Mercero or Labonte, do you have any input you'd like to provide?
I'm not sure how concerned I am about the pitch necessarily, but the shipping container question is a good one. Like, where are we going with this? With what's it? You know, it's our job as planning commissioners to look 20 years out. And what does it look like 20 years out with a lot of those units? I'm not sure. But as far as the roof pitch, yeah, no, I'm not. No strong feelings.
Commissioner Mercero?
I have the same comments nearly as Commissioner Labonte said about the shipping containers. I'm concerned how that could end up depending on who's putting the shipping containers there.
Well, there is a company right as you get onto 205 that makes them. Yeah,
Mhm.
so,
Which they seem great. I'm just, just wondering in people's properties, but it doesn't seem like there's much we can do about that anyways. Am I right?
That's right. I mean, they can bring on a prefabricated structure, whether it's shipping container, or otherwise if it's built for habitation and meets the ORS definitions for prefabricated or manufactured. And then under the current code, they need to put the right kind of siding or whatever on it. But that's correct. Those structures, if they meet that criteria, can come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
does that help you at all, Commissioner Weiss?
I mean, I think I understand the problem. Right now, if someone put a shipping container in, they would have to style match the siding, the roof pit. Like, I don't want people building unnecessary roofs for their shipping container houses. So I'm not overly concerned with the roof pitch, but as it stands, it could be painted shipping container siding. Is that true? As this is written now?
That's, well, the exterior finish materials would have to be same or similar to what's on the home. So if they have vertical siding on the home, they'd need to put vertical siding on the shipping container currently.
I mean, as it's written here with the
Right.
deletion of E through H, that would still.
Oh,
be
with
true?
deletion, they could just bring in the shipping container. That meets the criteria for a habitable structure.
Right.
Right.
So I feel like having something, and so you're saying, what's the phrasing that you're proposing to include some management of the siding?
Yeah, if we removed similar or visually similar, so if we just said same as the primary dwelling unit with respect to, and I guess it says type, size, placement, and color. I guess that's the other thing, that it's hard to match color. If you say same color and Miller paint doesn't make Oceanside 12 anymore, then they're out of luck, no ADU. You know, if you say same. So it's been problematic with applicants just wanting, especially in the case where they want to do something nicer than the existing home and then circle back, it's been difficult to work through those.
I know in some of the homes in our city are cinder block homes too, so I wonder how that would play in to it.
Yeah. Right. For what it's worth, the trend in cities all over the state is to remove these type of criteria. It's the recommendation of DLCD to do that because it's not been an issue anywhere that people have made outrageous ADUs. But if we wanted to do it in baby steps, we could, try to keep something in there and then see how it goes and give it some time.
What may I ask, what would the city's recourse be if somebody put up a ridiculous ADU?
Well, if it met code, there wouldn't be any recourse. So you'd be stuck with it.
I think we need to come up with some specifics. But right now, can't even think in my mind what they would. Do you have any ideas? Commissioner Reese? No? Is this something for this portion of it?
You know, you could move forward without this because this is a holdover from the HB 2001, making clear and objective housing
Yeah.
standards. We are not obligated to finish this by the end of the year. We are obligated to address it. So if we're making progress on it, it's not, this part's not funded by any grants or anything. So if we wanted to pull ADU language and talk about that in more of a work session, like starting in October when we're picking up some work session
Can this
pieces.
be discussed at our work session next Tuesday with city council?
Not next Tuesday. I think we want to really keep that focused on the the town center. So you would want to do a work session where you talk with council about it. I think
Yes.
we'd want to schedule that probably then like quarter, the next quarter. So if we're talking September, maybe we go to like January for a work session for that.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I would like to propose that we
And I
remove.
agree, because I think without any specifics, we're gonna have maybe an issue.
Okay.
Issues.
Yeah, so we'll pull or we'll see what you ultimately decide this evening, but we can definitely pull the language regarding ADUs out of each of the R zones and save that for future discussion.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Mayor Milch would want to give his input, because he was the driving force of getting the definitions very clearly
Sure.
defined, so, okay.
To circle back on HB 2984, which was regarding conversion of commercial buildings, I pulled up the text of that House bill, and it does say now, a local government shall allow the conversion of a building or a portion of a building from a commercial use to a residential use. So it's either the whole building or a portion of the building can be converted. The applicant chooses.
That's just rezoning the property.
It's not rezoning, it's just reusing the building for a use that wasn't previously permitted there. Does that answer the question, Commissioner Labonte?
Kind of, yes, it does. If I just may ask, so I know that it was proposed that buildings along Portland Avenue would have a commercial first floor. So would that negate that? How would that play into?
Yes, that would supersede that. You would be able to go entirely residential the way that the state law, I believe. I don't know if maybe City Attorney Soper wants to weigh in on that one.
Excuse me, that's correct, yes. Heather.
So the state law supersedes our downtown overlay design standards by saying you can be all commercial, or, all residential.
If there's a variance in tax rates between commercial and residential, would the tax rate change if you converted it from commercial to residential?
I believe so. I believe the assessor would change that rate.
Now, is that something that we want for downtown, for the downtown revitalization? Because I remember there being conversation about, being concerned about it turning into all residential. Is that something that we can put in there?
We
language
can't.
review?
We can't. The language in the House bill goes on to say that this bill prohibits the local government from requiring a zone change or conditional use permit before allowing the use. So really, it's just a straight design review. Change of use comes to Planning Commission. They say we're complying with state law by converting to residential, and we say, yep, you are. Yep.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Part of the housing, packages of trying to make more housing opportunities. And I think probably related to buildings in larger cities going less underutilized for commercial uses post-pandemic and converting those over to residential without additional need for things like zone changes or conditional use permits.
I've read about that, where large office buildings are being converted into lofts and or apartments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm like, what a great use of a building.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other questions or input, commissioners? Okay, let me move on to the next steps here of this wonderful little process. Do we have anyone is there been any correspondence that's been submitted?
I have not received any.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak in support of the proposal? We have no one, do we?
I do not see anyone online raising their hand.
Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposal?
Again, no.
Okay. Does anyone wish to provide any testimony that is neither in support or in opposition of the proposal?
Nothing.
Is there any further testimony or any further questions from the audience? That would be no. Okay, staff comments. Does
Yeah.
staff,
Yes, I am just taking a quick moment to write down the sections that have the ADU references so that if you decide to move forward with a recommendation, we can specifically pull those parts out.
okay,
Um,
excellent.
I'll be done with that in just a moment.
Okay. Do any members of the planning commission have any questions regarding any testimony? Is it all right to close the hearing before you give me those?
Yes, you can
Okay.
close your hearing. Yes, you can.
If there's
deliberate.
no further questions, I will close the public hearing to additional public testimony. Public hearing on file number TXT-24-02 is now closed to additional testimony. Deliberation. Do we need to deliberate or are we done? I think we're done, aren't we?
There's a lot on off-street parking that we haven't really brought up at all here. Especially my concern is folks with ADA requirements. I realize there's not much that we can necessarily do about it, even though I would like to. But I'm not sure with the off-street parking how it works with handicap parking and if we have any ability to change any of this.
So I can just respond to that in that as soon as you put parking on your site, you are required to meet the ADA requirements of the first space and the closest space being accessible for that purpose. So anyone who's deciding to add parking to their site, if they add more than, if they add one space, that's an ADA space. If they add multiple, it follows the ratio that's required for anyone providing parking.
We've kind of changed the code in a way to make it easier for folks to not have to have off-street parking, to kind of encourage builders to use more of the lot. So what happens in those situations where builders aren't opting to do off-street parking? How does that play in with folks with disabilities?
Yeah, so currently they would use street parking. And I think if it did become something where someone who needed that type of service was, owned a business or worked at a business or frequented or lived nearby, there are, I know, processes to mark a street parking space, which I think the city would then take into consideration. And that would go through the city public works department to determine if there's a need to do that. But we're not able to, no city that's subject to the CFAC parking requirements is allowed to require an ADA parking space on a site.
That is absolutely wild. It brings into the question of livable community.
Yeah.
Folks who
Right.
have a tough time. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's an important thing to provide. And I think that the state response might be that, as people are developing properties, they're putting in some level of parking if they feel the market requires it. And so then as soon as they do, the ADA space is required. But I hear you on if they decide not to put in parking. And I think, this is a city that would respond to that if a resident or a business owner came forward and said it's something they need in their public right of way. I think the city would respond to that.
And Thank you. And I appreciate the, it seems, there's talk of like the heat islands to do with parking lots. But, I think it's important to mention the heat islands that exist because of roofing, too. And I'm wondering if Heather, in your experience in this, how often does that come up as an issue when it comes to the heat?
Not often in what I've heard from other, not at all in the things that I've read put out by the state on the CFAC parking requirements. I don't know, City Attorney Soper, have you heard anything about heat islands, parking versus roofs? I don't think it's been part of the discussion.
I have not, no.
Because
Thank you.
often, roofs are included in, heat islands, the creation of heat islands. So just wondering if that was, because we're told so much that this is about, conserving energy, where more units use more energy. And, the parking restrictions because of heat islands, but of course, more roofing does create the same type of impact. So just a couple of thoughts there. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Any further deliberating?
I'm just thinking about the way that DC and C2, the downtown core overlay, and the C2, which is being updated to now allow residential all throughout everything that was put into the downtown core overlay to protect. We had conversation about this like a year ago. Initially, it was retail on the ground floor, and then that got backed off at the last minute, and it was just any commercial on the ground floor. And now it could just be residential. And I've seen things where you kind of lose some of that feeling that you're looking for. We have some of that now. We're looking to have more of that, I don't know, Gilmore Girls feeling of the downtown. So I don't know if there is a way to maybe hold back some of the allowances of DC, like the 45-foot development height behind a requirement of having commercial or retail on the first floor to bring back some of what was originally designed in the DC downtown core overlay.
First, can I just say Stars Hollow would be my dream. And as we enter fall, I think anyone who's seen Gilmore Girls probably agrees. The 12-foot first floor base is absolutely a commercial height. That's intended so that you'll get commercial businesses on the first floor and then residential above. We're talking about conversions, right? So we're not talking about someone coming in and building something new. If they did that and wanted to go 45 feet, the first floor is going to be 12 feet high, which is going to rent out at a commercial rate, right? So I don't, and you couldn't come in and say, I want to do 45 feet high, all residential, new building, right? It would be taking an existing building, which we don't have any at that height, and converting it to all residential. So we don't have the concern until someone builds one and then comes in and converts it, right? So it's a pretty long range thought, but you're a planning commissioner, that's your job, but it is
Long-term
a
planning.
couple steps out from feasible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I understand, how do I want to word this? So much has changed in the last 3 to 4 years with the state of Oregon now changing some of the mandated rules that we've had for probably centuries. And they're changing them to hopefully provide more housing, and they want to see density. But if we adopt, or if we give our recommendation to city council to accept these, will we be able to make changes down the road or rewrite them if they don't work for our city?
Only if state law changes. And that said, there are some, and again, I'll ask City Attorney Stober if there's any updates on this, but I know there have been some communities who have put some legal challenges forward, just specifically to the CFEC standards, not necessarily the conversion of commercial to residential. I haven't heard anything about that. But if for some reason state law changed based on any kind of legal challenges, but I do not believe that that is anywhere near happening or potentially going to happen at this point.
It looks like Commissioner Labonte has his hand up.
Sure. What if we don't do this? Then what happens?
Then an applicant comes in and we have to just accept what they want to put forward, and we don't have any rules to base it on. We just accept them for complying with state law. But again, remember, this is a state-funded project, so potentially you're on the hook for paying the state back the $75,000 they spend on the project. I don't know.
Planning commissioners, what do we want to do at this point?
May I ask the attorney what would happen?
It sounds like there is a grant agreement of some kind that paid for this project. I haven't reviewed the terms of that grant agreement, but it would be typical that it would require repayment if the deliverables were not accomplished. And then Heather's absolutely right that the city would still be obligated to directly apply state law, even in the absence of adopting it into your local code. The other piece is that legislation earlier this year created the Housing Accountability and Production Office, or HAPO, which is going to be charged with enforcing state housing laws. So I would not be surprised to see some enforcement action against the city for noncompliance now that there's going to be a state agency dedicated to doing that.
Thank you.
Were you able to find all the areas regarding the ADUs if we wanted
Yes.
to refrain from adding that to our recommendation
Yes,
at this time?
thank you. The areas where ADUs are regulated in the development code are in the R7.2 and R5 zoning districts, but not in our MR high density district. We don't permit ADUs there. So the sections are 17.10.030 sub 5 and 17.12.030 sub 5. That's the R7.2 and R5 zoning districts.
Those notations should be included in any motions we make, shouldn't they?
That is correct. So you'd be potentially recommending approval of the proposed changes to Title 17 of the municipal code, except for the changes proposed to Section 17.10.030 and 17.12.030.
Thank you.
Commissioner Labonte, do you feel comfortable after this discussion with us moving forward with a vote on this without our colleagues?
To my comment earlier, no. I'd love to, especially with some of their expertise of the two members that aren't here, I think fit perfectly in the conversation, especially with some of the building standards. So yeah, thank you for the question. And no, I'm not sure how I'll vote. Heather, may I ask, one of the findings regarding the Metro functional plan, it says the proposed amendments do not significantly alter residential capacity within the city. Do you have some insight as to what they mean by significantly?
Let me just pull up that portion so I can read the sentence. Okay, so consistency with Metro's functional plan, proposed amendments do not significantly alter residential capacity within the city. However, several of the amendments do provide the potential to increase housing choice. So Metro, like the state, has the high standard of not removing housing capacity from your inventory. And so significantly alter could also be read significantly reduce. But however, several of the amendments do provide the potential to increase. So we're not removing any opportunities for housing, but in fact, we might be increasing it.
Okay.
We're not able to, well, this came up with our open space rezoning, just making sure we were not removing housing inventory from the city. We're required to address whether or not we're removing any potential housing from the city's inventory. So in this case, that's not happening with these proposed changes either.
So significantly would only, count if you're taking away, not so much adding.
Right. Yeah, exactly. In fact, it could be, you're not significantly reduced. So you're not even at all, I guess. I think the language in Title I says you may not significantly reduce residential capacity. So it could be read to be reduced.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mercero, do you have any questions or input that you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to make a motion that we hold making a recommendation and continue this. Do we have to reopen the public hearing if we continue this to another meeting?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I'm gonna ask the city attorney to weigh in.
No, you don't. No,
Okay.
you can just continue deliberations to a subsequent meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's my movement to continue deliberations to allow our other planning commissioners to make comment on this. It doesn't have to be a whole relitigation of all of this conversation. We can just address any new comments. And if anyone else is interested.
I'd second that motion.
Commissioner Weiss made a motion to delay this until another meeting time. It was seconded by Commissioner Labonte. Could you do a roll call vote, please, Tammy?
Commissioner Weiss,
Yes.
Commissioner Levante,
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
No.
Commissioner Mercero,
No,
Chair Smith.
No.
Motion fails 3-2.
Madam Chair, are you willing to accept a
Yes.
motion? I move that we accept and pass along the file number TXT-24-02, retracting section 17.10.030 sub 5 and section 17.12.030 sub 5.
Is it appropriate for me to make a second the
Yes, you
motion?
can second a motion.
I will second the motion. Motion was made by Commissioner Pat Smith to go ahead and move forward, and I seconded the motion. Roll call vote, please, Tammy?
Commissioner Weiss,
Yes.
Commissioner Levante,
No.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercero,
yes,
Chair Smith.
Yes. Motion passes. Alrighty. Do we have any business from the public or audience?
I have not received any requests.
Okay. Business from the planning commissioners, Commissioner Weiss.
No business.
Okay. Commissioner Mercero, do you have any business to share?
I appreciate all the help I got getting on the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
No, nothing.
Commissioner Labonte,
Just that I appreciate everybody's input tonight, and I'm thankful to have a group of people that work well together. So thank you.
thank you. I don't have any specific thing to mention other than it's always an honor to serve with you guys because yes, we seem to respect each other very well. We come prepared and it makes this volunteer work wonderful. Thank you. So on that note, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I will motion to adjourn the meeting and remind everybody 5:30 next week, 5:30, not 6:30.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Weiss made the motion to adjourn the meeting and it was seconded by Commissioner Pat Smith. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Weiss.
Yes.
Commissioner Labonte.
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Mercero.
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.